when she arrives, because I don't know.
I will. She's not here yet. Yep, I will. Oh, here she is. Beck. Sylvia.
I'm there. Just a minute. This is so typical. You didn't wear really. You need to find it. Yeah, it was behind the hub before. Oh, that's right. We found it though. Now, with the catering, did Hadassah give you any instructions on who's doing it and when it's being delivered?
Just that it's been delivered at 12 and they've got my contact number and it's beautiful. So
I reckon we can just use the tables and set it up. Perfect. Yeah, great. So it's coming at 12 o'clock. All right, I'll run around and be here because we've got gloves and stuff to help hand it out.
excellent. Thank you so much for your help, Ben.
That's all right. Do you know what it is? Is it the lunchbox?
I think it probably is. That's what we probably do. Also, it should be individually.
Yeah. Do you know what
I think it just uses the business school cafe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, one of those.
Whatever.
Yep. Grinder and press one day, but yeah, thank you, Sylvia. I thought I just...
You didn't change your PowerPoint, did you?
No.
Okay.
You can
Here somewhere. There it is. No, that's it. Pick it up.
in here. I'll just chill posture because these the students coming in. Because this is just the cafe level, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for everything. No, not been amazing. You're wonderful.
I don't even know if I can. Hopefully, I'll not miss something.
Yes, no, you'll be excellent.
I've not done anything. I had a couple of slides.
Okay. Well, let's get out. Oh no.
Mainly, the thing was I was thinking it'd be good to be able to actually navigate to the website and like show them around.
Okay. Well, do you want to get in there? Just I'll get.
I can if you want. Yeah, and then I can just.
I'm just going to go pause. Okay, can everybody hear me? Is that up loud enough? I think it is. Is that, oh God, that's too loud. Just go down one. Okay, well, welcome to the Faculty of Professions and Faculty of Arts HDR Scholarship Application Workshop that's being run by Sylvia Villios from Professions and I'm Claire Walker from Arts. We thought we would combine the session, largely because our faculties are about to be combined, but also we pretty well had the same things to say, so it made sense to bring everyone together at the same time. I've got a couple of announcements, but before I progress any further, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Kaurna people, and we'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I've been asked by our wonderful Faculty of Arts support staff to remind you, if you haven't checked in using the QR code and also signing up manually, we're asking you to do both because we'll have your names and email addresses and we can send any further information out to you after the session. So the session is being recorded, so if you would like a copy of the recording sent to you, we can send that to you, and PowerPoint slides if you want any further information. So if you can give us your email addresses, that would be great for those purposes. The other thing is that lunch is being provided and will be delivered at 12, so we'll have a short break then for you to go and grab food, but we plan to be sort of continuing all the way through. So Sylvia, was there anything that you wanted to say?
So just in terms of the program for today, we're going to have Emma speak to us, who's from the Adelaide Graduate Centre, and she looks after arts and professions. So she's going to guide us through the AGC website and also what the requirements are and what the process is in terms of applying for a scholarship for a master's or PhD. And then following Emma's presentation, then Claire and I are going to make another presentation and we're going to be speaking about what happens after that. So the actual selection process and how you can plan for that so that then you maximise your chances of success. And then following that, we're going to have a little lunch break and also we're going to have a HDR successful scholarship applicant come and speak to us, and they're going to talk to you about their experience and what helped them through the process. And again, just trying to maximise the chance of a success for you all in the next application round. And then if we have time at the end, which hopefully we will, for those of you that have started your application, then we're happy to have a quick look through it and provide you with any kind of hints as to how to improve it, if we can see anything like obvious. And then even following this session, if there's anything in addition, if you want kind of one-on-one support, then I know that for professions, I'm happy to provide any advice. I'm sure Claire for arts will do the same.
Okay, so did you want to do the introduction, or will we have... Oh no, that's right, we have... Yes.
Where's the best time, aren't they? Go. All right, is that, yep, working? All right, guys, so welcome today. My name is Emma. I am a member of staff over at the Adelaide Graduate Centre, and essentially we are the centralised office who works to support high degree by research students. So if you're doing a PhD or a Master of Philosophy, we're the central point for that. I personally, sorry, I've got a bit, I'm not breathing properly here. I personally work in the scholarships team, and so I support with the scholarship application sort of process and getting scholarships set up for students. So what I just wanted to talk to you about today is the scholarships that are available to you, and also the process for applying for these. So we have sort of a wide range of scholarships that are available to HDR students, but the real main ones that we focus in on are the Research Training Program Scholarship and the University of Adelaide Research Scholarship. And the reason for this is sort of the bulk of our scholarship availability is these two types. You can see down the bottom I've got that there are other scholarships that are provided sometimes by donations or bequests, or even external funding bodies, but these are more specific to the area that you're studying in. So some might be for professions, some for arts, some for science. So it's a bit challenging to talk about those because they're individualised, but I'll show you where you can look for ones that might be available for you. So with the RTP and the URs, these scholarships essentially help to provide a tuition fee waiver. So unlike your undergrad, you can actually have a fee waiver which prevents you from needing to pay fees for your PhD or your Masters. They also provide a living allowance, all right? And in 2022, that's going to be around about $28,500 per year. They have other allowances as well, things like if you're international, overseas health cover, sick leave, parental leave, these types of things can also be covered. Essentially, if you're eligible to apply for admission and you meet the minimum academic standing to enter a PhD or a Masters, then you can submit an application for scholarship, and we really encourage you to do so. But one important thing is you also need to be able to enrol full-time. There's only exceptions for part-time if you have carers, responsibilities or medical reasons. Otherwise, you're going to need to be able to sort of enrol on a full-time basis. So in terms of allocation of scholarships, the RTP and the URs, most of these, or all of these, are allocated through our scholarship rounds, and we have a few rounds per year. And essentially the rounds are divided into, we have domestic rounds, so if you're an Australian citizen, a permanent resident, or a New Zealand citizen, you can apply in a domestic round. And we also have international rounds, and it's split into two categories. So probably for most of you sitting in the room, if you are an international student, you might fit into the first group, which is a recent University of Adelaide graduate. So if you're either completing your bachelor, honours, masters at the end of this semester, or if you've completed within the last 2 years, then you can go into this recent graduate group. All right, and that's kind of running parallel with the domestic round, but it'll make more sense when we look at the website. But if you're not a recent University of Adelaide graduate, then you'd fall into the international category, and that's where all international students from around the world compete. So, yeah. What I did want to draw out, because I figure most of you are either probably domestic or current University of Adelaide students if you're in the room. So we have two rounds per year. We have, and this is for domestic and recent graduates. We have a major round. Our major round's actually open at the moment, so that's probably what we're focusing on. And applications for that one are going to close on the 31st of October, so getting closer to that. And essentially that would be for commencing in semester 1 next year. And then we also host each year a mid-year round, which is for commencement in semester 2. And those applications tend to open around May and June. Depending on where you are in your academic program, if you're going to finish, end of this year, you might be looking for the major round. Otherwise, you might be interested in the mid-year round next year. Right, so I've got that slide there, but what I was thinking I might do is just take you onto our website through the university website, so you can know where to go to search for the scholarships, look at the scholarship rounds, apply online, etc. So if we come to the Adelaide website, we sit in here under Research and Innovation. We're the Adelaide Graduate Centre, and essentially we have a little pop-up here at the moment because the major round's currently open, so catch your attention. But you can also come through future students. And then basically this just provides all information that you might need as a student who's considering undertaking an HDR program. Talks about choosing Adelaide, why you'd like to study with us, the degrees that are available, so as I said, PhD or MPhil. This is the page for our scholarships, but this is also probably the link I'd instruct you to go to, which is about how to apply. And so when I say how to apply, it's applying for admission and scholarship. So if we scroll down here, you can see that you can apply for admission at any time throughout the year, but if you want to apply for scholarship, it's important that you get into one of the rounds. So, as I said, we've got the domestic rounds. This one's, major round's currently open, closing on the 31st of October. And then the mid-year rounds to be confirmed. But then we've also got the international rounds here as well, and this is where I spoke about the fact that we have rounds for people who are not recent graduates or current University of Adelaide students. But then if you are, there's a separate round for you, and you'll notice that, the dates align, so the recent graduates and the domestic students are in sort of run in parallel. This is a really good page to check out because it talks to you about the steps to apply. So, step 1, of course, is checking your eligibility, and it clearly states here that, to meet entry for a Master of Philosophy or a Doctor of Philosophy, there's certain criteria based on what qualifications you have, if it's honours, if it's a Master's by coursework. You can have a look there, so it's really, as I said, to apply for scholarship, mainly it's about meeting criteria for admission. There's also some information here about scholarship criteria, and this takes you through to you can go through to our scholarships page here, and essentially provides, more from a scholarship perspective, provides information for domestic applicants, again listing our rounds, and also international applicants as well. So if we just go back a second. So in terms of actually submitting an application, we encourage you to have a look through this how to apply page and the rest of the website. And then when it actually comes time to applying, this Apply Online tab instructs you depending on your citizenship status. So either if you're an international student, there's an application platform for you guys. And if you're a domestic student, you apply through a slightly different platform. Unfortunately, they're not combined, so you just need to choose the one that's relevant for you. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure if perhaps maybe the best way would be if you've got any questions. I don't know if anyone has any questions or things that they'd like to ask you about. That might be a better way to move forward from here. So, yeah, has anyone got any questions? Yes? Yeah, no, so...
Sorry, I'm just going to repeat. Can you hear me on that? The question, because, or could you just make it clear what the question is?
So you're just asking, is there any rules about applying for PhD? Yeah, so look, to be honest, that falls more into sort of it's more of an admission question. I'm a scholarship, no, it's fine. I'm a scholarships officer, so I'm not the expert in this area. But my understanding is when you are submitting an application, you can apply for both PhD and put in preferences about which programs you would like to be considered for?
I mean, well, not most, I mean, yeah, actually I'd say probably most students in arts would apply for both simply because they want to hedge their bets, and if they don't get accepted into the PhD, because sometimes you might not quite have the qualifications for the PhD in the area you want to work. So say your undergraduate work was mainly in another discipline, you might not quite have the disciplinary background to do a PhD in the discipline that you want to do it in. So in that instance, you'd be accepted into an MPhil first, and you would have with the provision that you would be allowed to upgrade to a PhD once you demonstrated that you actually had the capacity to do that. So it's probably best, unless you're absolutely certain that you've done really well in media all the way through your undergraduate degree, you've got first-class honours in media, and you're really confident that you're going to be accepted there directly into a PhD. Check with your potential supervisor and ask their advice also, because some disciplines vary a bit. Some disciplines only allow students to apply for the MPhil. I think classics is one discipline that likes all their students to start with an MPhil and upgrade. So it will vary a bit, but so talk to your principal supervisor, the person you've chosen, and get their advice. And if you're really unsure and you can't get an answer, contact me and I'll look into it for you.
And I think the other thing, just to add to what Claire said, is that if your end goal is the PhD, then MPhil's a really good way to get there. So if you don't meet the criteria to get straight into the PhD program, then many of our students start by doing the MPhil as they approach the 18-month mark, and if the supervisors are happy with the progress that they've made and the project's got that potential to get to PhD level, then they apply for the upgrade, and almost always they're successful in doing so, and then they don't kind of lose any time because the master's time's taken into account so they can complete the PhD in the same time as someone who entered into the PhD to begin with. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Thank you, Gab. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, when you register online,
Yeah.
is that just a registration or is that your application with the proposal that goes in?
Yeah, so when you're submitting, do you mean with the application form that we were looking at here? Yeah, so that's submitting your entire application, so with your proposal.
Do that until you got your proposal all sorted.
So look, we actually really encourage you to get in early and take a look at the application form. You essentially can come in and say, I'm a new applicant, and register for an account in this section, and then you can actually start to take a look through the form. You don't need to complete it all at once.
You can do that first.
Yeah.
Worry about your proposal.
Well, I suppose you could do it in parallel. If you want to get in and have a look early, then we really encourage you to do that. But yeah, probably the main thing, and something I should really state, is that Don't leave it too late. Don't leave it, if it closes on the 31st of October, we really encourage you to start getting in there now, having a look, checking out what documentation you're going to need to provide, that you can come and visit the Graduate Centre if you have questions, or you can phone us. I'll just point out here. So these are our contact details. While content-wise, it might be great to talk to Sylvia and Claire. If you're having any issues with the actual application form, we're more than happy to receive email, phone, visit us. We're over in the Schultz building. Just so we're happy to answer any questions and provide you with the support that you need to submit the application.
Emma, could I just also ask you to go through the documentation that they need to upload as part of the application?
Yeah, no worries. Yep. I'll just go this question first. Yep. No.
You mentioned there are 2 rounds, the semester 1 round and the semester 2 round.
Yep.
Are the bulk of applications and PhD slots given in the first round?
Yeah, okay. That's a good question. So for those people at home, if you couldn't, or not at home, I guess on the recording, if you couldn't hear, so the question was about where is sort of the bulk of the scholarships and the applications received and allocated. Obviously the language is probably fairly obvious. A major round is where the bulk of our sort of scholarships are given away. We just have a much larger applicant pool and therefore more scholarships. There's a smaller number of scholarships which are given away in the mid-year round, but it's also a much smaller applicant pool. So both are very competitive, but yeah, it's kind of variable, a larger pool and a smaller pool. Does that make sense? Yeah, lovely. Sorry. Documentation. One more question. Yep.
I just wanted to ask, what's the main difference between the University of Adelaide scholarship and the research training stipend? Why are there sort of 2?
Yeah, no worries. So the Australian Government Research Training Program Scholarship, that's funded by the Australian Government. The university one is funded by the University of Adelaide. The RTP, as we call it, is quite a prestigious scholarship, and universities all around Australia have this one on offer. So yeah, it's more about it. It's a more prestigious award, but both actually offer sort of the same, the same value and the allowances, all those sorts of things. So. All right, documentation. So I suppose the documentation that you need to upload really depends on, as you're filling out the form, the types of answers you provide. So it's quite an intelligent form. Not everyone needs to upload exactly the same things. So if you have a look, it's a bit zoomed out. I don't know if I can zoom in. There we go. So for domestic students and also permanent residents, when you're using this, the application form here, you'll see it talks about required documentation is things like either evidence of citizenship or permanent residency status, degree parchment, so we'd be looking for transcripts, and also, what was I going to say there? Yeah, basically certified copies of your transcripts that demonstrate completion of the program. Also, a current CV, making sure that you provide a CV that includes everything and anything that's related to your area of research, and just documenting any work experience or publications or research experience, and also your qualifications as well, making sure they're all documented well on there. Also may need to provide evidence of English language proficiency, but again, these types of things are going to be sort of dependent on what it is that you're, the questions that you're answering in the form, okay? So that's also why, we encourage you to get in there early and start having a look. With the international application as well, it talks down here about documentation. So, this probably is going to be a bit more significant in documents, things like your passport, evidence of English language proficiency would be required as well. But yeah, again, things like your academic transcript, your CV, all of those sorts of things. Is that helpful? Yeah. Yeah, so it's dependent on you. So I really encourage you, if you're interested, and particularly if you're looking to apply in this round, try and get in there straight away and start having a look around. Then you can ask the questions if you have them. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes?
When it speaks about academic transcript,
Yes.
does that mean the application can only have like an official purchase one through the university, or for example through Access Adelaide we can generate like a draft copy one free? Is either of them acceptable, or do we need to go out and purchase an official one?
Yeah, do you know that this falls into the admission category as well? I'm actually not. Do you guys know? That is true.
Your undergraduate degree somewhere else. So maybe you did your undergrad degree at another institution, did honours here, or vice versa.
Yeah.
You'll need to provide a transcript from the institution that isn't the University of Adelaide.
Yes.
Is that the same with the degree parchment as well? Need that if you've done your degree here?
I would assume so. Did they need the parchment as well as the?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. This is a. I would go. Yeah.
And we'll let you know.
Yeah.
Because maybe we should get someone from admissions here.
Yeah, sorry, it's really challenging. I've come along to talk about the scholarships, and yeah, unfortunately, a lot of this, because it's so interwoven. My suggestion would be, as you're filling out the form, making sure that it will tell you what it is that you need to provide, and just making sure that you do provide that documentation. And if for some reason you have a query about it, as I said, you can email the Graduate Centre or call or come and visit, and more than happy to our admissions officers will be more than happy to work through your particular circumstances with you. Yes.
I was going to say, as an honours student that studied at Adelaide, I've gone through the application process.
Yep.
And the only document they required was I didn't need my degree parchment form
Yep.
and transcript. I think they can just get that if you put your student number in.
Yes.
In the application, it will just note that you graduated here, so I don't think
They should be able to find out themselves.
if you indicate that you're a current student or you've studied here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know that the form does ask if you are a current student, which I'm assuming most people probably are or have recently studied here. It'll ask for your student ID number, so probably feeds through with that. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah, the required detail on the proposal. So I think these guys are going to be probably more well equipped to explain about that, because that falls more into the research category.
The research proposal you have to do. Yeah, I can talk a bit about that when Sylvia and I.
Yeah, lovely. Yes.
I'm looking at potentially, I study here now and I've spoken to some guys about this, but I'm moving to say, am I still able to apply for scholarships if I'm going to be an external student?
So that's really an individualised question. I would suggest getting in touch with the Graduate Centre and talking to an admissions officer about that, because that will relate more to the project and your actual admission, about whether or not you can study sort of from a remote capacity, that sort of thing. So, yeah. Thank you, though. That's a good question. What I might do is leave it there and hand over to you guys, because I don't want to use all your time. So if you have any other questions specific to the scholarships, more than happy for you to get in touch with us. As I said, the scholarships website is there, and there's email that you can send to the graduate.centre, and it will get popped through the scholarships team, and we can help you from there. All right?
Thank you so much, Emma. That's all right. Sorry, there you go. And it's great to have Emma as that point of contact, so that if you are applying for scholarship, she's the person at the agency had that meeting with Emma, so that she can then assist in guiding you if you're having any problems with applying. Okay. So.
Okay, do you want me to start?
Yeah, I think maybe we divide it up into like finding a supervisor, putting together the proposal and then the slides. So did you want to do the first part?
So is that on the slides? Or
No, just the second part is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, before you even, obviously you decide that you're going to do a high degree, think about whether you're doing an MPhil or a PhD, and think about the topic that you're doing. One of the key things, and you'll see that on the list of things that you need to consider when you're applying, is you need to find a principal supervisor. Normally students would have two supervisors, a principal and a co-supervisor. You don't need to worry about finding a co-supervisor in the first instance. I mean, you might actually have one in mind, and if you've got two supervisors, that's fine. But for the processes of applying, you have to find a principal supervisor, and they have to be somebody who works in your area. So if you want to write a classics thesis on Roman history, you can't sort of then go and find someone in another department who vaguely has an interest in it but actually has no expertise. You need to find somebody who has knowledge about your area. Now, they don't have to be researching in that area. Ideally, it would be great if they were, but they need to be able to supervise your topic and help direct you along the way. And it's really important, and I think Sylvia will stress this as well, that you start a conversation with your principal supervisor when you contact them, because they're going to be writing or they're going to be evaluating your application in your area, and they're going to be writing supporting statements for your application. And when it comes to scholarship allocation and ranking, those kinds of supporting statements can make a lot of difference if particularly you haven't quite made the grade, to get into that first cut of scholarship allocation. So make sure, if you don't know your principal supervisor particularly well, you let them know all the things you've done. If you've actually acted as a research assistant for somebody else, you've published something, make sure they're aware of that so that they can put that in the supporting statement for you. Is that?
Excellent, yeah. So I think that's the first step, because some people apply and they haven't had any interaction with an academic who they'd like to supervise their thesis. So you can't kind of be admitted into the program without having a principal supervisor. And as Claire said, kind of the second or the co-supervisor, the principal supervisor will help you to source afterwards. But that's a really important step. And also putting together a research proposal. So whilst the AGC and in terms of scholarships, we don't spend a lot of time looking at the research proposal, it's something that you need to do as a preliminary step to get in the door. So
actually, I can give you, I copied, with the permission of the student, a proposal from a student. So I know there was a question about this, so I might just quickly, what have I done with it? It's just before Sylvia. Oh, there we go. This is actually a proposal that a student put in for history last year. Oh, there it is. You can see that it kind of moves across music and history. And just in terms of, if you're really stressed about the amount you've got to write in the research proposal, I'm showing you this so that you're aware that you don't have to have a massive document. You just need to be able to explain briefly what your topic is, what your research questions are. So you'd have, your introductory background, a paragraph, which explains that. Research questions. Now, they'll be changed as you go, when you actually start, you'll be able to refine them. But you need to be able to explain what contribution to knowledge is your thesis making? What research questions is your thesis going to answer? So here we have some for the piano thesis, which have actually changed, I should say. Then the aims and objectives of the project: to produce a cultural history of music and the piano in South Australia. So you don't need to go into a lot of detail and jargon there. You just need to be able to say what it is. Significance and contribution to the discipline is you've got to be able to situate what your topic is within the existing literature on that topic. Now, it doesn't have to be an exhaustive literature review, but you have to identify the key scholarship in the area that you're working on and say, well, these people have done this work and they've covered these particular angles, but no one's quite looked at that angle that I am considering looking at. So again, you can see it's literally a paragraph, a couple of paragraphs on that. Theoretical framework and methods. You need to be able to explain how you're going to answer your research questions. Now again, you don't need to give masses of detail here, but you can say, well, the theories of a particular scholar are very, very helpful for understanding my topic and for explicating it. Or, you don't even have to have a grand theorist. You could just say that the methodology employed by a particular scholar is going to be the one that you use, particularly if the scholarship in your area uses a particular methodology. You might just say, well, I'm going to do qualitative analysis. I'm going to collect a whole load of texts on my topic and compare and contrast them and draw the material from them. You might be doing quantitative analysis. You just need to be able to briefly explain how you're going to approach going about answering those research questions. Your principal supervisor can probably help you with this if you're having problems, or you can put something together and send it to your principal supervisor to go over and give you some more tips. Then you need a research plan and timeline, which I think is completely wacky asking you to do this now. How would you know? But there you go, there's a good example of one. And then references. That's literally just a preliminary bibliography based on what you've done. So I'm just showing you that because it's a really succinct example of what you can do, and it's going to be in the recording. So if you want to go back over that and have a look at it, you can do that. And great thanks to Ben Nichols, whose proposal it is. So I'll just get out of that and go.
And I think it's also important to recognise that this isn't set in stone. It's just a preliminary proposal. It's just kind of your introductory thoughts coming together. If you are successful in being admitted into the program, then you'll have the first 6 months to do a thorough review and to then develop that further and develop your research questions and your methodologies further. And from my experience, when I look at the initial proposal versus what the end PhD looks like, they're very, very different, and the research questions sometimes fundamentally change. So it's more about building that rapport with your principal supervisor and making sure that they're confident in your ability to undertake the MPhil or PhD, and that you can work with them to help you to develop your research skills as you go through the program and to put together a really good thesis.
And it is really helpful as well because it does get you thinking about what you're doing. In the distant past, when I did my PhD, we didn't have to do a research proposal, and I messed around for the first couple of months trying to work out. I had my topic, but I had no idea how I was going to do it. So I think it's really, really helpful because it means that you're starting not from ground zero, you're one step up, and then you can just develop your application proposal when you're doing that bigger research proposal in the first 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So just in terms of show of hands, does anyone have in mind a principal supervisor who they've either approached or are thinking that they'll approach? So roughly kind of 3/4 of you. Great, excellent. So that's really important because that's an important first step, and I don't think you can get further without having that initial discussion. So for those of you who haven't had that initial discussion, have a think about who that person is. Go online, on your school's website, and if you're not familiar with all the academics and what areas they specialise in, try to align, as Claire said, your research area and interest to an academic that will be well suited to it.
What do you do if the person that you want as a supervisor and who has said that they would be interested in supervising you, but they're not sure if they've got space to take students?
So you need a backup option, because if they say that they don't have the capacity to supervise, then you won't be admitted into the program.
Well, they've said because they've got people that should be finishing, but they're not sure if they're going to.
There's a thing called the supervisor register, and all supervisors, principals and co-supervisors have to be on it, and they have to have capacity to supervise. It's just so that people don't overload, because in the past there were God professors who had tens of research students, and basically neglected them because they didn't have time to supervise them. And so the supervisor register is an attempt to make sure that quality and adequate supervision is provided to all students. And so if your preferred principal supervisor is overloaded at the moment, find somebody to act as principal supervisor, and then it's possible to change the supervision around when that principal, your preferred person has capacity to take you on. Just requires a form. That's one thing you'll discover. The Graduate Centre loves forms, and so there's a form for everything once you get in.
And that might be the plan of action. So to actually set that out at the outset, to say to this person, I'll have this person acting initially, and then will you be able to, so have that conversation, just so that everyone's clear on what the supervision team's going to look like throughout candidature.
Yeah, or I guess because my honours supervisor, he's also in the same boat, and then one of the other supervisors said he's not interested in my topic at all. So I'm finding, like, do I just wait until they are going to
So
free?
what area are you in?
Music.
It might be a good idea to talk to each area has a postgraduate coordinator, and they should be able to help you if your particular department is not helping you. So in fact, we should have put a
Great
list of
advice.
the PC. So I'll actually send out an email we'll send out an email with all the postgraduate coordinators for the particular areas. And if you're having trouble finding somebody to supervise you, get in touch with your PGC and they'll be able to assist. Hopefully.
I think there was another question.
With the co-supervisor, do they have to be inside the university, or can they be external?
They can be external, but they have to be on the supervisor register. And I mean, that's not a disaster. They basically just have to apply to go on the supervisor register, and it has to be signed off by the dean to make sure that they're qualified and they're eligible to supervise. But principal supervisors have to be members of staff here. And also in most, well, I don't know whether it's the same in professions, but in most areas in arts, they actually have to be a current member of staff, academic staff as well, not a retired member. That's not universal. Other parts of the university, obviously, with adjuncts or the place in health sciences, can't actually have that. But in some areas in arts, the principal supervisor actually needs to be a current academic member of staff. Is that true in professions or not?
We can, at the moment, we still have adjuncts that can act as principals, so yeah, it differs, I think. But with co-supervisors, sometimes it's difficult to find them externally because they might not be given workload credit for it, given that they're coming from a different university, and that's what we've had troubles with. Oh, and they have a PhD?
Well, yeah, he does have a PhD, but he's within the field and the work with people with the PhD, so
Yeah.
You have to have two, but some people have three. Sometimes people have more than three, but the more supervisors you have, I think the more complicated it can become. People have different opinions, so two people reading a piece of work will bring sort of their different ideas to it and pick up certain things. But if you've got lots and lots of people, sometimes it's
too
a bit
much.
confusing, and so you'll be getting conflicting advice. So don't amass a team of about 5
No.
supervisors, is my
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah. Unless you want to work through the critique of 5 different people on the same topic. Yeah, I think that's best. And so in terms of, if anyone doesn't have any other questions about that, we've also got a PowerPoint in relation to what happens in terms of the scholarship selection process. So once you've applied for scholarship, we then have a meeting within our faculties, so myself, Faculty of Professions, and Claire, Faculty of Arts, and we rank the applicants for scholarship within our own faculties first, and then we do the same thing at university level with the additional 3 faculties in the uni, and then we have a order of merit list, and based on the amount of scholarships the university is going to award, there's a cut-off point. So we've got a slide that we've put together, and so yes. So here, in terms of what we're looking at, and Claire, you just interrupt me whenever you like. These are the things that we're looking at. So we're looking at your undergraduate qualifications and your achievements there, then also your postgraduate qualifications and achievements, and then I'll speak about dot points for 3 and onwards when I talk about equivalence. But let's just look at the first 2 first. So on the next slide, in terms of your undergraduate score, we look at your bachelor degree GPA from all your units of study, so you'll know what that is. And then we also look at the highest post-bachelor qualification score, so using your highest completed qualification that's relevant to your intended field of study. And there are 3 different categories here. We either look at your honours, your coursework masters, or your higher degree by research, and we'll look at each of those kind of options and the process that we follow. So the first one, so on to the next slide here. So option 1 is if you've got an Australian honours degree, then we look at how well you've performed in that. So, you know, obviously first class 1-1 gives you the highest number of points, and then following down from that, you're awarded less points, and we call that the actual score, and that will place you where you rank in that order of merit list. So that's probably not surprising to you. You know, the better you perform, the higher your point will be. And the second option is the coursework master's degree. So if you've completed a coursework master's degree, then again we'll be looking at your GPA excluding the research, and then also we'll be looking specifically at the research component. Now the reason for that is because you're applying to enter into a research degree, so we need to separate that out, and we actually look at that, you know, as a considerable weight, and then we will rank you or give you a score according to what your GPA excluding the research is, and then adding to that your research achievement as part of your masters by coursework, if we can separate it out. So that's how we look at that, and kind of that's how we allocate the points. So again, the higher your achievement in your coursework, and particularly focusing on the research component, the higher you're going to rank in the order of merit list. And then finally, the higher degree by research. So if you've already got an MPhil or another higher degree by research, and we'll then look at your HDR grade, and then that will then determine the amount of points that you receive, and that will place you in the order of merit. Now, importantly, so that's what we call actual. So there's nothing we can do in terms of changing those points. It's just an actual based on your level of achievement under each of those 3 options. But what we can do, and this is what Claire was alluding to previously, is this honours equivalence way of getting, sort of working out what your points are and using that in the order of merit. So that's where, and then particularly in our faculties, we find that quite often at this point in time, the people who are applying haven't actually published anything yet. Very few people have actually published, whereas if we look at kind of the STEM-based faculties, sometimes we see like 10 or more publications at the point of applying for a PhD. So we need to look at other forms of potential that we can see in the applicants, and that's what we'll be using to argue that, hold on, the honours score was this, perhaps, for example, But we think, based on these other factors, that what the students achieved at this point is equivalent to first class 1-1, and they should be awarded 30 points. Okay, so that's what we call the equivalence score. And the same applies to options 2 and 3. They can be upgraded based on additional achievements that you can demonstrate in your application, that you've communicated to your principal supervisor, so that they can write you a really strong supporting statement to say, you know, this student has, you know, has won these awards, and they've done some research assistant work, or they have co-authored a publication, and that's a highly ranked journal article, and the focus there, that narrative, is around research-related work. Professional activities as well, if you're coming from, you know, having had a work experience, anything that's research-related within that work experience. If it's not research-related, well, it's not really going to support the fact that you would rank higher on a research point system, but provided that it's research-related work in your professional activities, then make sure that you highlight that, because this is your kind of time to shine. And same with the target demographics score. If you're in a highly male-dominated area and you're a female looking to research kind of in that area, or vice versa, then that's something else that you can highlight as to support the fact that your equivalence score should exceed your actual. So that's, as Claire said, where a supporting statement's really important, and quite often supervisors don't understand the importance of that supporting statement. So you can also assist in that process to say, I understand there's an equivalent score and I've done these additional things. So whilst this was my actual, based on the fact that I've also done this research-related work since that point in time, can you include that in the supporting statement so that my equivalence is higher? And then that will maximise your chances of getting a scholarship.
One of the things that you can do if you're from the arts faculty, if you've had a summer research scholarship over the course of your undergraduate degree, that's something that you can definitely put in your application and explain what you did and what the outcome of it was, because that's demonstrated research capacity. So anything like that can go in there.
Excellent. Okay, now, does anyone have any questions about that before we move on to COSTURE? No? Now, I think our lunch has arrived, hasn't it? Yeah. So if you'd like to go and grab your lunch and a bottle of water, and then COSTURE will present the student experience whilst you're eating your lunch.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you. Oh no! Sorry to interrupt you. Just make sure you say it. Thanks so much.